Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today our learning goal is I can multiply integers using the multiplication rules. We can determine the outcome of a product by observing the total number of negatives being multiplied together. Let's take a look at the number of negatives. The first one we are going to look at is 0. When there is 0 negatives, the outcome is positive. When there is 1 negative multiplied by a positive, the outcome is negative. When there is 2 negatives being multiplied together, the outcome is positive. When there is 3 negatives being multiplied together, the outcome is negative. When there is 4 negatives being multiplied together, the outcome is positive. Observe a pattern. If we have an odd number of negatives, then the outcome will be negative. If we have an even number of negatives, then the outcome will be positive. Let's take a look at this example. -1 is being multiplied 25 times. We know 1 times itself 25 times is just going to be 1, but we have to determine, is this going to be negative or positive? Well, if 25 is an odd number, my answer is going to be negative, and it's going to be a 1. So if it's an odd number of negatives, then it's going to be negative. If it's an even number of negatives, then it's going to be positive. And if it's 0 negatives, then the answer is always positive. We are going to go over our multiplication rules. In our first arrow, we are going to put a positive times a positive. A positive times a positive is a positive. Now let's look at our next one. Positive times a negative is a negative. A negative times a positive is a negative. Lastly, a negative times a negative is a positive. Now let's take a look at some examples. 12 times 3. Well, it's a positive times a positive, so I know my answer is going to be positive. And 12 times 3 is 36. Now my next example. 12 times -3. Well, I know 12 times 3 is 36, and a positive times a negative is a negative. So my answer is -36. And again, we have -12 times 3, and 12 times 3 is 36. And we have a negative times a positive, which is a negative. So my answer is -36. And lastly, -12 times -3. Well, I know it's 36. And a negative times a negative is a positive, so my answer is positive 36. I also could have looked at these and looked at which ones have an even number of negatives, because then it would be positive, or an odd number of negatives would make it negative. Now let's take a look at the Your Turn page. This is your chance to do some practice problems. Let's take a look at number 7. Now, okay, number 7 has -1 being multiplied 1,081 times. Since that is an odd number, my answer is going to be negative, and it should be -1. Now, please fill out the remainder of the page yourself. Do not forget to rate yourself at the top on a scale of 1 through 5 on how you feel on multiplying integers. Also remember to write your reflection at the bottom. I learned. Please complete the bottom reflection. Thank you.